Today on Cyberwork, I welcome Weldon Dodd of Kandji to the show. Weldon is the Senior Vice President of Global Partnerships for Kandji, and he brought us an interesting report. They found that a majority of respondents said that Apple devices and systems were less likely to be affected by a global software outage like CrowdStrike.
There's two areas of concern here, right? One is the actual technical underpinnings of each of the platforms and how they operate. And there's some important differences there that lead to better security outcomes. The other side is just the social part and the ecosystem.
Weldon and I dig into the report. We discuss the different challenges in securing Apple and Windows systems, and Weldon gives our listeners a lot of great advice for getting started in your career, whether it's committing to your areas of passion or advocating for yourself while not tearing down others.
It matters less what it is that you've learned over the last couple of years, because I can guarantee you that whatever it is you've learned over the past 3 years, you're going to need to learn something different in the next 3 to 5 years in order to keep moving along with your career.
This is a very inspiring episode, and I hope you'll come learn more from Weldon and I this week on Cyberwork. The IT and cybersecurity job market is thriving. Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts 377,500 new IT jobs annually. You need skill and hustle to obtain these jobs, of course, but the good news is that cybersecurity professionals can look forward to extremely competitive salaries. That's why Infosec has leveraged 20 years of industry experience, drawing from multiple sources to give you, Cyberwork listeners, an analysis of the most popular and top-paying industry certifications. You can use it to navigate your way to a good-paying cybersecurity career. So to get your free copy of our Cybersecurity Salary Guide ebook, just click the link in the description below. It's right there near the top, just below me. You can't miss it. Click the link in the description and download our free Cybersecurity Salary Guide ebook. Your cybersecurity journey starts here. Now, let's get the show started. Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork Podcast. My guests are a cross-section of cybersecurity industry thought leaders, and our goal is to help you learn about cybersecurity trends, and how those trends affect the work of Infosec professionals, and we'll leave you with some tips and some advice for breaking in or moving up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. Weldon Dodd is the SVP of Global Partnerships at Kandji. He began his career running a campus Mac lab and Next lab at the University of California. Soon after, he then went on to wireless telecom, just as digital networks and the internet came to mobile. The next stage was automating large Apple deployments and running the Apple Authorized Training Center in Colorado. Weldon joined Kandji in early 2020, where he has built and led several teams and now serves as the Senior Vice President of Community. And actually, I believe, is that right? Yeah, Senior Vice President Community. Global partnerships. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. All right. I apologize. So, senior global partnerships. So today we are going to talk about a report that Kandji put out regarding the security differences, let's say, between Apple and Windows systems. And all of our listeners are going to be securing one or the other or both of those in their careers. And so I'm sure they're going to want to know more about this. So Weldon, thank you for joining me today, and welcome to Cyberwork.
Thank you. Yeah, really great to be with you today, Chris.
My pleasure. So, Weldon, to give our listeners a chance to get to know you and your origins, let's talk about where you first got interested in computers and tech. What was the initial spark, and how did it sort of come to this point where you were very excited about things like security?
Yeah, the initial spark was in sixth grade. We had an opportunity to have a TRS-80 installed at our elementary school, and I learned how to write some elementary programs, and we had to save those programs to cassette tape.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to play them back, you had to rewind the cassette tape and then play it from the beginning of your program to load it back into the computer. But that was the beginning of a lifelong obsession and interest in technology.
I know that it was probably like 30 seconds that those things took to load up, but it felt like it took like 12 minutes to like load a program.
Ages. Yeah.
You would put on the simplest game, and it would say press play, and then you would just like go in the other room and make a sandwich, and it would still be blue screen until you're ready to come back.
Looking back on it 30 years later, I can't imagine how I had the patience to wait that long for computers to do things. But there we
Unreal.
were. We thought it was amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And then the disk drive came, and it was still slower than anything you would even
Mhm.
find acceptable now. But it seemed like we were in Buck Rogers' time. So, we want to talk a little bit about some of your past positions as well, because obviously your past creates your present. But you've definitely had a foot in the technical space, even when you worked as a high school teacher. So you've worked as you said in your intro, certified Apple implementation specialist. You were a course instructor for Jamf before winding up at Kandji. Can you talk about some of these different steps on your career trajectory and how some of these varied experiences found you where you are today, leading global partnerships with Kandji?
Yeah. I mean, some of this backstory maybe is only interesting to like my mother, right?
Yeah.
But I'd be happy to share a little bit. For me, I always wanted to be an educator. I was always interested in learning. I loved books and reading, and I really enjoyed school and learning new things. And so I kind of had that in my mind. Well, I met my wife as I was finishing up university, and we got married right as I was graduating. And then as I was looking for a job to move into after finishing university, we were fortunate, blessed to be pregnant right away.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I had a very clear choice presented to me
Yeah.
where I could spend another 6 years in higher education to get an advanced degree, a doctorate, and teach at that level. Um, and I was going to make about 28,000 or so. That's what associate professors made at that time
Hmm.
after finishing their PhD. Or I was putting myself through school by working in the computer labs, and I taught
Hmm.
computer classes to faculty and staff, and taught people how to use databases and some elementary programming and Unix basics and things like this. And through that association, I was offered a job in IT, and that job paid $42,000 a year.
Yeah.
So I could go to school for another 6 and make nothing during
Make
that
half
time
of
and then
that.
make 28 when I was done,
Hmm.
or I could make 42 now. And because I had a child coming, I felt this real need to provide for my family that was coming. I went into IT.
Yeah.
And what I found was that my interest in technology that had started way back in 6th grade, combined with my interest in learning new things, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And being able to teach other people was really fulfilling within IT. I was able to do all of those things with technology. And so it led to a really nice career.
Yeah, well, yeah, you said that only your mother would be interested in that career track, but I mean that is actually exactly what our listeners are looking for, because a lot of our listeners are just getting started. They might still be students, they might be in their first job, they might be in their second job, but they're looking sort of ahead to things, and yeah, life always is going to make sometimes make change, make decisions for you, and it's good that you were able to um, go after the thing that was going to allow you to raise a family in a healthy environment. Now, in the sort of ramp up of going from teaching people in the computer lab how to use databases to your first IT position, were you mostly sort of self-learning? Were you doing
Mhm.
any kind of outside education to sort of get better at sort of your IT skills, or were you able to sort of secure this first job based on the IT skills that you already had working in the computer lab?
Yeah, I was fortunate in that I secured this first offer because I had worked alongside the owner of a small IT business in town. I was in Santa Barbara, California,
Hmm.
and because I was working in the computer labs on campus and teaching classes, we had outside instructors come in to teach certain topics. And so I got paired up with this person from the outside who had his own IT consulting business. Um, a lot of, something like we might call an MSP today or just a
Mm-hmm.
IT consultancy. And because he'd seen me on the job and we'd worked alongside of each other in this university lab environment, he felt confident to offer me a job just based on his direct experience. Um, Now, for the rest of my career, I did from time to time invest in going to training courses. I spent some time at KPMG, which is a
Hmm.
very large global consultancy
Hmm.
systems integrator, and they they're quite good at investing in their people. And so it was really fortunate for me to go to a large firm like that that had a very well established and developed program
Yeah.
with funds set aside specifically to invest in their people.
Yep.
And so I was able to take advantage of that and get some Microsoft training, some Cisco training,
Mhm.
and other things that helped me gain certifications that, built up my resume and helped me show not only that I could do the work, but I had some credentials to go along with it that showed that I'd spent some time learning and investing in my career.
Yeah.
Generally, when I think about certifications, and this is more on the advice side for other people,
Please.
um, as a hiring manager, I don't necessarily look at certifications as a hurdle that a candidate has to clear in order to qualify for the job. And I don't even necessarily think of them as, well, this candidate is superior to other candidates because they bring these certifications. But it does show a commitment to their career and their interest in really growing and developing in this field, that they've chosen this area of or field of study to invest in for themselves. And so that kind of commitment to working in IT, I think, is a strong indicator of a potentially good teammate or good employee.
Yeah, we're seeing a move towards that sort of 1-2 punch of people who think they can just lean on past experience and say, well, that's going to be enough to get me a job, or people who just get 20 certs and say, all right, I'm ready for my job now, and
Yeah.
neither of those necessarily being the right answer there. So the combination of you having done all this work, and learning things on your own. Uh, I guess I wanted to ask just very quickly with regards to the sort of professional development program at KPMG. Was this all sort of front loaded? Like, did you have like, for your first 6 months or whatever, did you have to like go through all these sort of cert trainings, or were you sort of doing this while you were working with them and you were kind of like, raising your bar every, 6 months, a year, or whatever?
Yeah. It was really more a consequence of working with them over time
Okay.
and advancing within the organization. So um, I had the opportunity to get promoted a few times. And for anyone that's not familiar with the global SI firms, they follow a pretty traditional model and there's very rigid title levels. And so you go consultant, senior manager, and then partner. And there, there's gradations within that, but there's those five levels, right? And so I was lucky to be in a field that was growing really quickly. There's a lot of investment in internet technologies and networking and the things I was working on. And so I got promoted from senior to senior manager to potential partner. And at each of those inflection points, KPMG was willing to invest quite a bit to give management training, leadership training, other kinds of skills that would help you not only within your technical field, but as a leader, as a people manager, and other things. And so that was really beneficial. Now I'll say also that I was really interested in it. I wanted to progress my career in that direction. I wanted to learn new things. And so learning things about managing and leading people was interesting to me. And so I was able to take advantage of that. I think other people in different circumstances will find that, if they have that desire and that need to learn new things and grow, they'll find ways to do it. I was very lucky to be in a position where I had the desire, but also the resources were being provided by my employer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the great answer. Now, I want to talk about specifically your time at Kanji because obviously there's the career roadmap that happened on your way here. But like me, who I've been at Infosec for 12 years and you've been at Kanji for a very long time as well, I want to talk about some of the various roles that you've had at Kanji. You've gone from solutions engineer, product strategy, community, global solutions, and now global partnerships. Can you talk about how one of these positions flowed from the other and if there were certain skills or experiences you needed to advance or promote along the way that would allow you to sort of climb up that next step there? What were some of the major steps in this journey?
Yeah, I think part of the answer there is I joined Kanji when it was still very young and it was quite small. So there's about 15, 16 of us when when I came on at Kandji, we just raised a seed round and we're, starting to fill out some more positions. And there was a need for someone who really deeply understood um, the Apple ecosystem and how the Apple device management worked. That's the space that Kandji operates in. We make software tools to allow companies to manage and secure their Apple devices. So I had a colleague, Nick McDonald, who was serving in this role of having a really deep background and expertise with Apple. I had also worked at Apple and done a bunch of things with mobile device management. And so the two of us were there to really bring that expertise into the company and help share that with the engineering team that was building the product, and help with support who was answering questions from customers, and really be subject matter experts for the company. And so I came to it with that mindset that I was going to be an individual contributor, a subject matter expert that would apply sort of my narrow expertise to a very specific problem. And one of the surprises for me, when I came to Kanji, was that I met a group of people, like-minded individuals that I really enjoyed working with. And so I was presented with two opportunities, right? One was to build a great product and to apply, my background and expertise and experience with Apple to a specific problem. But I was also presented with this opportunity to build a company and to build teams of people that could work on these problems. And so, because I felt like I found my tribe in this group of people at Kanji, I became very interested in adding this second problem to, my repertoire, or, my list of things to work on. Right. So I continued to contribute to our product and what we were trying to build for our customers, but I also became very interested in helping to build the company and to build teams of people. So the titles that you've listed off there, it's really a progression of me moving through roles where I would try to build a team of people to work on a problem or solve an issue for Kanji, serve a function, right, for our customers or internally, and develop leaders for that team. And then, very, very fortunate, but the leadership of the company saw that I could do that for other teams and for other areas of the company. And so I was able to move around a bit to work on some different areas within Kanji and help build a whole company.
So I want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. It almost sounds like uh, positions that you have held, like global solutions and global partnerships, weren't necessarily there before you, but you've kind of built them around yourself. Is that the case? You are not stepping into someone else's shoes. It was like, we need someone who can handle global partnerships now, and you said, Weldon Dodd, your man.
Yeah, it's been a bit of both, to be honest.
Okay.
So there's been some greenfield spaces where there wasn't anything at all. And so um, we helped put that together. There's a particular problem um, within our product where w- there's a some of what we do is we provide patch updates for applications that are installed on devices to make sure that they're always up to date and on the latest version. And that's a really strong first step towards securing a device, is to make sure it's fully patched and updated. And that's an engineering function to get the latest app installers packaged up and checked and make sure that they're ready to go out to customers. But it works on a very different cadence than the rest of our engineering team, who's building functionality within our product, where they might be working on a scale of, we operate on 2-week sprints here at Kanji. And so a project that they're working on, a feature that they're developing, could be anywhere from 1 to 4, 6, 8 sprints. They might be working on something for a couple weeks, a couple months. Um, the the auto apps, we call them, these application installers, there's updates every single day, and they need to be processed quickly and get out to customers almost immediately. And so because of that difference in the cadence of work, we found it necessary to build a different team to work specifically on the auto app installer packages and make sure that those were being handled quickly. And so that was a separate team that we built, systems engineering. It's led by a very capable colleague of mine, Noah Anderson, that came out of Target and was doing device management for them. We another colleague, Daniel Chapa, who came out of Nike and was working on automation and engineering for them to do it. Right. They built a really great team, and those two became the core of this new function that we built. So that's an example of something that was greenfield. We hadn't done before. We needed a team to go do that. That team has continued to grow and develop, and they're doing great things. In some other areas, like with partnerships, right? I again am in a fortunate position where I've had some very capable colleagues who have started that program and built it up and have put Kandji in a really good position to work with channel partners and some outside consulting firms and integrators, other kinds of partners. Um, and now I have the opportunity to try to take that team and get to new heights with it. But I definitely owe a huge debt to the people that have come before me and got that part of the company started.
So, what does an average week look like as a senior vice president of global partnerships? Are there certain things that you're doing each week regularly, or is it completely different from day to day? But for people who are window shopping their future, what exactly can you expect in a role like the one that you have?
Yeah, there's a lot of meetings. So sorry for anyone who imagined
It's true. If
senior
you're a
leadership to
manager, you're
be
going to be in manager
glamorous,
duties.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
there's a lot of meetings, but that's a consequence of, the role is a lot more about enabling and empowering other people to do their best work. And a lot of times what I've found is one of the keys is allowing people, almost giving people permission to do the things that they know they should do and the things that they already want to do and the things that they're already good at, and just giving them uh, maybe small bits of advice that are helpful along the way. I tried to be helpful, but a lot of times it just comes down to uh, being the person who's trusted within the organization to make a decision so that people can move forward. And I have a great team of people working with me in global partnerships, and they do great things every day. And so I find a lot of times my role is to just give them encouragement and say, yes, you're doing the right thing. This is great. Keep going. Every now and then we identify some things that could be better, or there might be gaps in what we're doing that we need to try to address. But most of the time, it is simply making decisions so that the team can take action and move forward instead of waiting either for direction or permission to take the next step.
I'm just thrilled, first of all, that you you didn't do the thing that a lot of the C-suite people I interview say. Well, there is no average day in what I do, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I mean, there has to be some consistency in that regard. And I'm in the marketing department, and we talk about the importance of not doing random acts of marketing, where you have to have
Mhm.
someone at the top saying like, this is or this is not important. I don't care how much fun it is or how you think it might look good or whatever. Like, does it make sense or whatever? And so you're kind of orchestrating that on a global scale, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. There's only so much that any one person or any team can take on. In my experience, you can have two or three initiatives running at any one time. If you've got more than that, you begin to lose track of what was really essential or important that caused you to take up that initiative in the first place. And your effort becomes too diffuse to have any real impact. And so sometimes the job is saying, you know what, that's really good. That's a really good idea. That sounds very important, but we just don't have room
Yeah.
to do that right now. And these other things are more important at the moment. We need to focus our efforts there. because ultimately, we don't just want to work on things that are important. We want to deliver change to the organization that's going to have impact, that's going to make a difference in what we do. And to do that effectively, you really have to create focus so that as a team, you can not only take some steps, but you can take a few steps that substantially change or have a substantial impact to the team or to the org that you're working with.
All right. Now, as we suggested at the top of the show, we wanted to have you on, Weldon, because Kandji recently released a report that says, "quote Apple products are far less likely to be impacted by a global software outage, such as the CrowdStrike event from earlier this year." So, I want to start by asking about this from a technical perspective. What is it intrinsically about Apple security systems that make them more proof against these type of mass attack effects?
Yeah, so these findings were from a survey that was conducted by a research firm, which Kandji commissioned, and the findings that came back are from a few hundred different IT leaders across a pretty wide section of the industry. And so these are their words, right? That they feel like Apple devices are uh, easier to secure than Windows or other platforms. And I think that's true primarily for there's two areas of concern here, right? One is the actual technical underpinnings of each of the platforms and how they operate. And there's some important differences there that lead to better security outcomes. The other side is just the social part and the ecosystem portion of what's happening with each of those platforms. So from the technical side, right, Windows, really we're talking about the PC ecosystem with more or less open design hardware from a variety of different vendors with components from several different competing vendors. And while that variety in the ecosystem has led to a lot of innovation, a lot of progress, there's wonderful things that have come about because of that more open PC ecosystem and the many companies that participate and push each other forward. It also means that Windows sitting on top of that hardware has to be more accommodating to allow a wider variety of device drivers and other kinds of software to run, sometimes with privileged access to the system to be effective. And so that's a really broad surface area for people who manage Windows devices to try to protect. Apple has a technical advantage in controlling the whole widget, the hardware and the software together, and being able to design their devices with that thought in mind, that things like the secure enclave portion of the Apple silicon processors that run those devices have fully integrated security features and processes that the operating system is tightly coupled with in order to protect cryptography secrets and other kinds of essential foundational pieces. So that's one important difference. But we could talk about more.
Sure. Oh
What would you
no.
like to talk about next?
Oh no. Yeah. I sort of have an image in my head, like the difference between, say, like if you had two sets of plumbing and one was just like a one entirely unbroken piece of piping versus
Mm,
one that's made up of small segments that have to be sort of like sealed and put together. Like with Apple, you just have this sort of unbroken chain of machinery that is all sort of working with each other. Whereas Microsoft, you're essentially kind of chaining all these different things together, and I suppose it's at all of these sort of chaining points that um, people can get in. So, I mean, what are there certain things that you're seeing hackers regularly exploiting in one system versus the other? Are there particular common attack vectors that people in your survey talked about?
yeah, I've just come back from an Apple focused security conference. Unfortunately, it was in Maui, Hawaii. Honestly, it was terrible having to go there and attend. I might be kidding, but um, Patrick Wardle puts on a conference called Objective by the Sea, which is probably the premier security conference for folks that are focused on Apple. And it was really interesting to see some of the latest research that's come out. People were there to present their findings and the security research that they've done. And there's been a pretty large increase in uh, what we call info stealers. So software that's designed to gather private information off of a device, so think of credit card numbers, but also email addresses, passwords, social security numbers, credentials, anything like that. And then find that data, collect it, exfiltrate it out to a server, usually running in some part of the world that it has less stringent laws and control over cybercrime.
Yeah, a lot less
And
oversight.
yes,
Yeah.
um, and so the Mac has become a target for some of that type of software. It's been prevalent on Windows for a long time. There's lots of well-known examples over there, but we're seeing some attention coming to the Mac platform as well. So I think it's important to understand with all the available hardware platforms, whether that's desktop or mobile, if it's Windows, Apple, or Linux, if it's Android or iOS or iPad OS, there are opportunities um, for malicious software to either steal information or disrupt the operations of the company that's using it, and so on. And so that's true for all of them. So some of the things that we're seeing are, the kind of some growing interest and some new innovation in these info stealers, but the scope and scale of that is still quite different to what we see on Windows. And so that goes back to my second point, which is around some of the more social aspects or like the ecosystem aspects of it. There simply are more Windows devices out in the wild. And so for a group that's interested in using these to collect credit cards or whatever information, Windows simply presents a bigger target and an opportunity to collect more of this kind of information more quickly. Um, and and that combined with some of the vulnerabilities that exist in um, within these platforms, right? You put those two together and say, okay, well, I know about a vulnerability that I can exploit to get the info that I want, and I have a larger pool of targets to go after. I'm going to put my time and energy and effort into going after Windows. Mac is a little tougher target, and it represents a bit of a smaller opportunity, and so I'm going to invest less effort in there. But um, that's led, I think, to the kind of the difference that we see
Mhm.
between the two platforms and why this opinion is coming out in the survey that you're referring to. But the truth is that Apple is growing and the Mac footprint within the enterprise continues to grow. And if you look at just unit shipments, the PC market as a whole is on the decline, and unit shipments year over year have been going down, and Apple shipments have been going up. And so, it's really one of these things where it's a continuum, right? It's not all one way or all the other. It's a continuum. It has traditionally been a bit more, there's been a bit more focus on the cybercrime side on Windows as a target, but I think Mac is becoming more of more interest as it continues to grow and become more popular within the enterprise.
Are there particular sectors that are more Apple focused in the sense that if you are going to go for the higher risk, higher challenge of trying to break Apple systems, is it because you're trying to hit different types of targets? Because I imagine PCs or Windows have sort of an intrinsic layer of people who just home computers, a lot of like phishing, a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
like, versus like certain enterprises that might be, all Linux or all Windows or all Apples. Does that sort of change the sort of target shape for the hackers?
Yeah, I mean, it traditionally it's been true that Apple has a really strong presence in marketing, creative, design departments, things like that. and less prevalent in finance departments and other kinds of functions like that. But we've also seen Apple become really popular with executives. And so a lot of organizations have brought either Mac or iPhone into their org because the senior leaders or executives want to use those devices and they've kind of insisted on it. Um, but there is a breed of company, particularly in tech and software startups, SaaS companies, where their business is building software generally for the internet, software as a service companies that will run or deploy their solution on, generally Linux, but increasingly that's becoming more abstracted with technologies like Docker containers, Kubernetes, and so on. But building on Apple for that kind of target platform for your software makes a lot of sense. Apple's built on a foundation of Unix. Most of the internet services that you interact with are built on top of Linux or Unix-like services. And so software teams, a lot of them use Apple devices to write other software, to do engineering work. So um, I definitely think that's a good example. A modern SaaS company that's starting up today, they might be doing security, they might be doing AI work. Um, they're going to deploy Apple laptops to their employees. And it might be that the entire company is running on Apple.
Yeah, as we go towards SaaS companies and so forth as being a larger and larger part of the uh, you know uh, uh, overall economy, I suppose that's probably going to
Yeah.
increase everything. But what do you think the ramifications of this report will be? People been saying anything about these findings, or have you received feedback or say rejoinders from either Apple or Microsoft? And do you think this is going to change anything in a large scale way in terms of the way operating systems are built and secured, or is it more just like they all sort of looked at it, well, like, yeah, we know we're working on it.
I think it's indicative of a trend, right? That there's a growing interest in adopting Apple within the enterprise. A lot of orgs are mixed, right? Where they have both. I think that's increasingly common to see an org that has multiple platforms. I think SaaS is a part of that trend. The fact that many company operations run in the cloud with software as a service solutions means you're less tied to the specific desktop platform that you need to run those productivity applications. And that allows for employee choice. So with whatever platform they feel more comfortable with or where they feel more productive, right? They can pick Windows if they prefer that. They can pick Apple if they prefer that. And they can be immediately more productive in their role. And the applications and tools that they need to use for their company are accessed through a web browser, and they don't necessarily need to run them on one platform or the other. So that's allowed it. I think we have talked with Apple about the findings, gave them a look at the survey results, and they enjoyed it. Right? It's generally favorable towards Apple. It shows a growing interest in it. More and more companies looking at it. One of the statistics is around if you see Apple usage increasing within your org, and there's an overwhelming majority of respondents say they see Apple increasing in uh, size and importance within their org over the coming year. So that's good news for Apple. Um, but I generally think the survey itself is showing people that it's possible, and so it might open some eyes to the possibility that, look, I hadn't considered supporting a multi-platform ecosystem previously, but I see other companies are doing that and being successful with it. And so that might be something that I could consider.
Yeah, so the key benefit for cyberwork for our listeners is to sort of provide them with tips or advice for choosing their career path and achieving it through learning and study and hands-on work. And I think we have certainly heard from students who talk about wanting to sort of go down one path or the other, or fearing that if they go too far down one path, they won't be ready for the other. Can you talk about the difference in skills that a cybersecurity professional at the student or entry level would need if they wanted to focus on securing either Apple or Windows for enterprises that they'd eventually be employed by?
Yeah, I think there's a few different roles that are possible within an org. So um, there's a whole area around governance, regulation, compliance, and um, those GRC functions are, I think, increasingly important to organizations. It's not necessarily that you know adhering to a particular standard or framework is like a golden ticket to securing your devices, but it definitely teaches good practices and it gives you the ability to create a baseline for your organization that you're going to measure yourself against to say that, like, look, we intend to manage risk within our organization by enforcing these security controls. And those controls are defined in well-known industry standards that we can borrow from and assemble, a baseline that makes sense for our organization. So that's one area I think that's really important. And increasingly, I think IT decision making is going to be driven through that lens of looking at what baseline are we going to adopt as an organization in order to manage risk. Um, Another area is just around threat research or detection engineering. Those are different disciplines, but I think they both fall within this area of being more directly security focused, where you're either as a detection engineer, right, you're looking for ways to build rules and systems. Increasingly, we're seeing the adoption of AI tools to help aid with detections, in finding malicious software, either a virus or some kind of malware or an info stealer, right? What techniques can you apply to find that software within your org, right? Research a little more focused on new techniques or new ideas to do that, and detection engineers often pick up that research to apply it to a specific problem, right? But that's kind of another area of concern. And then there's um, the folks that actually manage and run our administrators of practitioners with security software tools, CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, Kandji, et cetera, that organizations deploy in order to meet the baseline that they've set for themselves, to apply the research that detection engineers and things are coming with, but then, take action on any problems that are found. So if you detect software, right, then what do we do about it? Can we isolate that machine? Can we quarantine it? Can we cut it off from access to any sensitive resources? Being able to integrate with IT to accomplish objectives like conditional access. That's based on not only having the right credentials, presenting your username or password, or maybe a pass key to get access, but being in the right place, right? In an expected place at an expected time of work, coming from a system or an endpoint that is managed and secured and is verified to be free of any known malicious software, viruses, et cetera. Like, being able to couple the security piece with the IT piece so that you could accomplish conditional access, say you can only get access to the sensitive resource if not only do you present the right credentials, but you're in the right time zone, you're coming from the right country, you're coming from an endpoint that's known and managed and is known to be in a good, secure state, or has the right security posture. Now we can allow you to have access to whatever this resource is. Maybe it's a payroll system, maybe it's accounting, maybe it's R&D research that is essential to the lifeblood of the company. So that would be another area.
Now, that's awesome advice. Now, you've given us a number of different kind of buckets of knowledge or areas that are going to be important in the coming years. For people who are just getting started, you started obviously right with working in a computer help desk basically, or computer department, and went into an IT job. For people who are doing that sort of thing now, who are uh, maybe have a baby on the way and need to get into the
Yes.
industry quickly, or whatever, like what are some of the types of skills or certs or hands-on activities or projects you think entry level young people, students, job changers need to be focusing on now, to sort of help them prepare them for these different types of roles, whether it's GRC or whether it's implementation or whatnot.
Yeah. I think for what we've done here at Kandji is for folks that are coming through some kind of cybersecurity program, whether that's a credential certificate or maybe a 4-year degree from a university, we're hiring those people into junior roles in our security team to start out either as a detections engineer or maybe a junior researcher. And so that provides some entry level opportunities. I think if you go the IT route, um, and you're working help desk or maybe you're working on backend systems as a junior within your IT team, getting experience with tools like um, device management, Kandji, or other tools like Intune on the Windows side, CrowdStrike, Sentinel One. Some of getting experience with those tools and seeing how they work, that will open up a lot to you. It's one thing to deploy the tool and look at the dashboard and kind of, see the reports and whatnot. But as you spend time with it and dig into it, you'll understand why it's doing what it's doing, what this means, and what is significant. Um, that this is kind of a tangent, but I think one skill that comes over time is learning to discern what's important from what's not important when you're presented with a long list of or a big corpus of data or a long list of material. This was something I was introduced to actually when I was studying history in university. Like that was my other potential career path, right? Was to be a history professor. And I had to read a lot of books um and sometimes I'd have to read a book a week or something for a class and give some kind of report on it, whether it was written or just oral. But there's a skill there to if you're going to read a long book, there's a lot of information in it. But the skill that I was supposed to be learning was find the important information in this book. Like, what is the critical idea or the new idea that's being presented in this book that's actually interesting and important? And IT practitioners have the same opportunity because there's lots of data available to you about a device or about a system. Learning to distinguish, okay, which of these log entries are actually important or significant is a skill that you gain over time as you become familiar with that system. And you'll learn like, oh yeah, these log entries are normal, expected behavior. They don't really signify anything of importance. But this log entry right here, maybe it's like a login, right? Or someone's privileges were elevated from a standard user to an admin user. Well, that log entry is significant. That's important. And being able to identify like those important, significant pieces of data out of a large body is, I think, is a skill that you can gain over time. But it requires practice. It requires repetition. And so going back to my earlier point, if you can get introduced to tools like CrowdStrike or Sentinel One or Kandji or others, right? It's useful to learn those tools because over time you'll see what's normal and expected behavior, and you'll begin to identify this is unusual, right? This is different, and it's potentially significant and important. And that skill is something you'll be able to take with you through the rest of your career as you encounter new systems and new areas of learning and or new functionality, right? Being able to gain an understanding of, okay, this is what's happening. I can see the regular pattern of behavior, the regular cadence of information. but this stands out as being new or different. Um, that's something that you'll need to apply over and over again throughout your career.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. And I want to sort of add on that you said you do occasionally hire entry level people to do things like threat research and sort of lower level research functions like that. What sort of things do you want to see on someone's resume? Not in terms of necessarily their credentials or whatever, but like things that indicate that they have done the work or they have interest in it. Like, how do you sort of um, make yourself known in a pile of resumes as someone who has done the work or can do the work or has that inquisitive mind? What are some of the green flags that you see?
Yeah, green flags for me would be focus would be one, right? You can see a real intent by the candidate to grow and develop in a particular area. And it's not even necessarily important that that focus perfectly matches up with the opportunity that we have or the need that we need to fill, but it indicates to me that this person has the ability to sustain, not only interest, but effort in a particular area in order to grow and learn. I think that's a great indicator of future success that someone's been able to focus and apply themselves to a specific set of problems or an area of problems. Um, when I speak to someone, I learned this trick from a leader that I really enjoy working with, Nathan Sparks, who's at Kandji with me. He'll often focus his interview questions on trying to bring out something the candidate is passionate about. Because if you can get someone speaking about a topic that they feel strongly about, that they're passionate about, it reveals a lot about their character and like who they are as a person. And again, it's like it might be Formula One racing or English Premier League football or something, right? It maybe it's dancing or crochet or macrame or something, right? Woodworking. But if you can get someone talking about a topic that they're passionate about, that I find is really important because uh, and working in IT can be very challenging, and portions of it are tedious at best, right? But if you have that passion and interest in anything, right? It shows you have the capacity for feeling strongly about something. It indicates that you might be able to bring that to your work as well. So if the company that you're interviewing with and your own interests happen to align in a way that allows you to bring, a bit of yourself, a bit of your own passion for what you care about to your work, that's probably going to be much more impactful than whatever class you happen to take or whatever credential you might be able to bring to the organization. So one, yeah, I think you should consider if you are that type of person who has that passion for learning and technology and trying new things and always being challenged to pick up something new, because that's what IT is, right? You should consider if you are that kind of person. But also you should think about, well, how can I demonstrate that to a potential employer that I do have an interest here. I love to learn. I can apply myself to learn something quite deeply. Because again, it matters less what it is that you've learned over the last couple years, because I can guarantee you that whatever it is you've learned over the past 3 years, you're going to need to learn something different in the next 3 to 5 years in order to keep moving along with your career. And so I care less about what specifically you've learned in the past, but I care a great deal about your ability to learn and your ability to sort of passionately apply yourself to a new problem.
That is great career advice for anyone, whether entry level or otherwise. But I think it's just great career advice all around. So before we go, Weldon, I want to ask you though, you could get a piece of career advice that you received that's been influential in your life. What's the best piece of career advice you've received?
Um, yeah, I'm thinking back to I don't know if this is the best career advice I've ever received or the most important, but
Fine.
the incident or moment that comes to my memory is really early on in my career. I was just a couple years out of university, and I remember being, um, I don't know what the right emotion is, annoyed, disturbed, distressed that a colleague in a slightly different department, wasn't really in the equivalent position to myself, but a colleague had received some recognition and uh, some pay that I had not. And I went to my boss and said, like, I've been working hard and putting in hours, and here's the things that I've done. But instead of asking for what I wanted, I pointed out that this other person got something that I wanted, right?
Yeah.
And his advice to me, I think, was really sound. His was like, "Hey, look, I was with you while you were talking about how you've been working hard and putting in the effort and you've contributed these things to the company. But as soon as you pivoted and pointed to what someone else had and that you wanted what they had and felt that you deserved something that they had received, you lost me because I don't want to hear from you about someone has something that you want, right? If you want something, come and ask for it and tell me why you think you deserve it." But deflecting and being kind of expressing this
Yeah.
jealousy, right? That someone else has something that you would like diminishes you, right? It makes you less in my eyes.
It carries with it this sort of notion that you're asking that thing to be taken away from them almost.
Almost, right?
Yeah.
And it had this negative feeling. And he was really sensitive to it, right? That was part of it.
Hmm.
But that stuck with me because I realized that, yeah, like, I don't need to build my success around stepping on top of other people, right? I don't need to gain something by taking away from someone else, right? That I could guide my career and I could get the things I wanted and grow in the ways I wanted to grow by focusing on myself and what I was doing and what I was contributing and trying to earn the things that I wanted to receive. And I think it was really important for me to hear that early on when I was young and to learn that lesson um, at that moment because it really served me well in my interactions where I could approach not only my own growth, but my interactions with my team. And from that standpoint of, look, we can all win. We could all grow, right? You can have success and I can celebrate your success and recognize your achievements and celebrate that and applaud what you've done. And I can also advocate for myself and the ways I want to grow and be recognized without diminishing anyone else.
It's literally the first time I've asked this question for probably 75 people, and that's the first time I've heard that very specific one. And I think that's awesome advice. So I appreciate that, Weldon. So as we wrap up today, tell us a little bit about Kanji and the things you do and the services you provide for your customers.
Yeah. So we are a device management solution with security tools so that if you're an organization that has Apple devices, MacBooks, other Mac, iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, whatever it might be, we allow you to automate the deployment and configuration of those devices and to monitor and secure those devices ongoing so that you can protect the organization from any threats, but also make sure that all your colleagues that are using these devices can be productive with the tools that they need, the software that they need, configured correctly, up to date, patched. And we do that with a platform that's really focused on automation. So my experience previously working with Apple is I did a lot of professional services work out in the field, helping companies deploy large numbers of devices, sometimes hundreds of thousands of devices. And at that scale, uh, we would do this over and over again with different customers. And what I found, my experience, was that I would do the same things over and over again with every customer. Certain, making sure disk encryption is enabled, setting up tools to name devices correctly according to the pattern that we wanted, to escrow the recovery keys, things like this. And you do this over and over again enough times, and the question just naturally is raised, like, if I have to do this every time, why doesn't the tool just do it for me? And that was the spirit that we brought to Kandji when we built it. Was we wanted to build a tool that would do the things for you, so that you could move on to other problems. Like, I really believe in IT as a career. I believe in admins having an important role within the organization. And we wanted to create a tool that would allow people to get past, like, hey, look, I need to update Chrome again, like 3 times this week, and be able to focus on some like higher level contributions to their organization. Like, I doubt there's companies that have their mantra or their mission statement, up on the wall is like, I'm going to keep Chrome patched, right? I don't think that's the mission statement that's on the wall, right? So we have
the
this
very
really strong
bottom with like a
focus.
little asterisk.
Yeah,
Also,
I mean, it's
also
in there,
please
right?
do that.
It is part of the job, right? But we wanted to create this focus on automation so that those things you could design your deployment, say, look, I always want Chrome to be patched within a few days, and configure that once and be done, and then move on, right? And so whatever that mission statement is on the wall, whether it's, helping people who are sick, or managing people's money, or building great software, or whatever it might be, right? You could go work on that mission statement instead of the tedious parts of the job.
Drop everything and think about a thing that's going to get you out of your flow. So it's awesome. So one last question for you. If our listeners want to learn more about Weldon Dodd and or Kandji, where should they look for you both online?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on a lot of the socials, just at Weldon. But probably the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. So Weldon Dodd. I don't think there's very many of us. So if you just put my name in, I think you'll find me at Kandji. And I'd love to hear from you. And if I can be helpful, I know you have some listeners who are early in their career. I've really enjoyed mentoring young people as they enter their career. And so if I can be helpful in any way, I'd love for people to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and insights today, Weldon. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really a nice conversation. Thanks, Chris.
And thank you to everyone who watches, listens, and writes into CyberWork with feedback. If you have any topics you'd like us to cover or guests you'd like to see on the show, drop them in the comments. Now, before we go, I don't want you to forget infosecinstitute.com/free. There's a whole bunch of free and exclusive stuff for CyberWork listeners over there. You can learn about Infosec's new career immersives, which can take you from complete beginner to job ready in 6 months' time via a combination of live instruction, hands-on practice, and personalized career coaching that can fit any schedule. Also, go to infosecinstitute.com/free for the free cybersecurity talent development playbook. You can download this and find in-depth training plans for 12 most common security roles, including SOC analyst, penetration tester, cloud security engineer, information risk analyst, privacy manager, secure coder, ICS professional, and more. One more time, that's infosecinstitute.com/free. And as always, the link is in the description below. One last time, thank you so much to Weldon Dodd and Kandji, and thank you for watching and listening. Until next time, this is Chris Senko signing off, saying keep learning, keep developing, and don't forget to have a little fun on the way. All right, bye for now.